Video, I'm going to show you how you can use Airflow with modern data stack tools like Fivetran, dbt Cloud, Snowflake, and Power BI to construct an end-to-end data pipeline. So the first thing to do is to open up VS Code and create a new DAG. What we're going to do is create a task graph that's constructed of three tasks, right? The first one is going to trigger Fivetran. The second one is going to trigger dbt Cloud. And the third one is going to trigger a Power BI dataset refresh. We can see that there's quite a lot of code that needs to be run to do this. And that's because of a few things. So firstly, you need to implement the code to trigger Fivetran. You'll notice that we've not put our API keys in here, which means you'll also need to manage things like injecting secrets to Airflow at runtime. We don't want to trigger these things asynchronously. We don't want them all to get triggered at the same time. What we want to do is wait for the run to complete. That means you need to know the endpoint for polling, and you also need to know how to pass the response. In this case, we can see that the code I've written actually isn't sufficient because the run ID is going to be nested in this Fivetran run response object. So that variable will need to be passed in. You'll actually have to do this multiple times, right? So you have to do it for Fivetran, for dbt Cloud, and for Power BI, all of which will probably have different authentication methods, different endpoints, and different error handling. You could, of course, use an out-of-the-box operator, because, of course, Airflow is open source, but these don't always have, the level of reliability that you might want if you wanted to build something yourself. And then the final thing to note is that if you want to do any error handling, with actual helpful logging, then you'll have to build that yourself too. Now, you'll notice that the polling here isn't actually implemented very well. So we've got a while true and then a time.sleep. That's obviously bad practice, and this is clear from the bottom DAG because we're just triggering three things in a row. In reality, you'd probably want to use sensors. So this is what that code looks like with sensors. Here, again, you can kind of see you have the same thing, right? But you have to build a sensor every time you want to poll for something. And that's reflected at the bottom. So that's how you'd use Airflow to trigger a Fivetran run, trigger dbt Cloud, and then trigger a Power BI dataset refresh. You can see there's also additional code to write in order to send email notifications, Teams notifications, and Slack notifications. But of course, you're not done yet. In reality, this repo will need to be Git controlled, so you'll have to implement continuous integration tasks in your Git provider. This also needs to run somewhere. So typically, Airflow gets deployed onto a Kubernetes cluster. That requires maintenance, and it also requires setup. It also incurs cost. So in order to get these three sort of parts of the modern data stack working, there's actually quite a lot of work that needs to be done using an orchestration tool like Airflow. The final thing to note is that in the UI for Airflow, you'll have a very simple exposition. So in the Airflow UI, you'll see something that looks a bit like this with the DAG we did below. So sort of three boxes. And the logging information that you get here is highly limited to basically the amount of code you're willing to write and I suppose how well the operators are written. You could, of course, run dbt and Airflow natively, but this requires even more custom setup because you're probably using the Astronomer Cosmos CLI, not CLI, plugin. Cool. So this is how you build this DAG in Airflow. I'm now going to show you how you do this in Orchestra. So we're going to log in to Orchestra. And the first thing to do is to build a connection. So in the case of Fivetran, you put in your connection name, and then API key and API secret. Very straightforward. To build a DAG, it takes a significantly shorter amount of time. I want this to run every day, so I'm going to choose this cron schedule. I can then trigger my Fivetran task. I can trigger my DBT task. And I can trigger my Power BI dataset refresh. If I want to run data quality tests in Snowflake directly, I can do that too. Finally, if I want to set up alerting, instead of having to configure multiple different, custom alerts myself by writing code, Orchestra gives you everything out of the box. So if you want failures for a specific task or the whole pipeline to go to a specific destination, or indeed destinations, you can do that really quickly here. Having multiple channels helps you avoid alert fatigue. So that's it. As you can see, it was a lot quicker. And the second thing to note is that the metadata that's available to you is a lot richer. So if we take this pipeline as an example, we can see there aren't many nodes being run, but what's happening in the underlying is much more complicated. Orchestra fetches this operation metadata so that when you need to debug failures, it's really straightforward. Here I can see that the product object's aggregated materialization has a failing test. You can see there are 5 results when there shouldn't be 5 results. That's helpful. You can see that the dashboard that this depends on hasn't been refreshed. I can see the data lineage. And if I want to debug more easily, I can select nodes in the selected path. So I can see what's feeding into this. So yeah, that's a quick comparison of building a very simple modern data stack pipeline in Airflow versus Orchestra. Hope this was insightful and illuminating. Any questions, just reach out to me, Hugo at getorchestra.io. We are